Hi, welcome back. In this segment, we are going to talk about AI as a tool for marketing and a concept that we are developing here called the Personal Storytelling Assistant, or the PSA, which is a tool I think that leaders increasingly will start to use AI for, or more specifically, generative AI, which generative AI is the content creator. We know that you can use AI to, streamline your manufacturing processes, your inventory control in retail, healthcare, other areas. There are plenty of places where AI is revolutionizing different industries. But in the generative space, generative AI is making content. It's making text, images, audio, visual, other data. And that is a storyteller's tool content. And what I'd like to talk about with you, Joe, is this idea that AI is, we talked a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, is the chief marketing officer the kind of chief interlocutor for a consultant like you? Is that the person you need to talk to? And you agreed, although, a lot of companies don't have a chief marketing officer. Smaller businesses tend to do that. The CEO tends to wear that particular hat. Whoever the chief storyteller is in an organization, that's who I'd like to talk to in this segment and give them a couple of tools for how they can streamline their branding, streamline their communications, if they're making a presentation for customers, for investors, for whomever. How do you recommend somebody start with AI for content and the kind of creation of this PSA, the personal storytelling assistant?
That's great, Chris. I love the thought process behind this because in my company, in Truversity, when we do consulting, we could work with anybody in the organization, right? You could work with the CEO, the CMO, anybody in the company, the chief sales officer, no matter what, HR, or work with people in HR. The beauty of AI is it touches every single department in your business. It also benefits every single industry. So getting back to your space and where you sit and what you're interested in is you talk a lot about marketing and getting your message right. So determining what that story is for your company and then coming up with an effective way to communicate that story in multiple ways, both internally in your organization and also externally to the market, to your partners, to your customers, and to the market in general. So this concept of a PSA, personal storytelling assistant, is it's kind of like, I always feel like you kind of came up with this idea, is like how to turn ChatGPT into something you call this personal storytelling assistant, which is such a great concept because ChatGPT is a great assistant in so many ways for us as we augment and assist ourselves in our daily jobs and roles. So the PSA. So how would you, I'll turn the question back over, is how would you get started with ChatGPT and how you use it now to first start creating your story?
Oh, well, that's the job of the CMO. Like, you have to start with values. You have to, I'm saying this as somebody who, has a whole concept called ValueCentric business design, but this is really like, if you're trying to teach ChatGPT to write a script with you, you've got to start with all the character basics. You've got to start with everything. And in a brand setting, that is answering the questions that a marketer would be asking you. What are your values? Why now? Why us? What are the pillars? What is your strategy? What is the core of the opportunity? If you went through the Sequoia Capital, how to write a business plan, and answered those 10 questions, that would be a good starting point. But I think like that's the first step towards building this PSA, is to feed it the right information, to feed it your brand narrative. And when I work with other folks in our orbit, social media community managers, et cetera, I send them a copy of the Princeton Kaizen brand narrative and I say, feed this in first so that it knows, the story of what you're trying to convey, and even if you are putting together short captions for Instagram or TikTok, or you're, writing a pitch for investors, you really it's the same building block. You got to have your why, you've got to have your how, your what, your who, you've got to have your product features and your plans. And, you've got to look at, well, what represents product market fit, all the different aspects of the business that you would go through with a marketer who was going to sit down with you and help you refresh your website. And they would ask you all the things that would be in that discovery interview. Phase one, what is your brand? That would be probably the first step with assembling this personal storytelling assistant. Is that jive?
Yes, absolutely. You touched on so many great things right there. I just want to point out one thing first. So this is what's going on right now with content creation tools, and we're going through this in our organization as well. If you're using AI content creation tools, you want to make sure that the artifacts that it's generating, whether it's social media posts, emails, blog articles, scripts for videos and podcasts, whatever it's generating, you want it to make sure that it's in alignment with your brand voice, right? So now the tools that have been created, they're incorporating the capabilities for you to define what your brand voice is in multiple ways. You can even just give it a link to your website and it'll go on your website and figure out what your brand voice is from your website. You can give it other documents that you might have, other writing examples. There's ways for it to generate that brand voice for you. And then you can use that to generate content that's in alignment with your brand voice. Now, getting back to the process that you're going through, in using a personal storytelling assistant, is the first thing you mentioned was you got to come up with the right questions, right? So if you go to an expert like you who has experience, you may already have those. You may already have the questions that somebody should be asking themselves. And that's like a really great place to start if you're working with a consultant or you're working with somebody that has the experience, is to start with those questions. But in the cases where you don't know what the questions are, like if we weren't able to sit down together, I wouldn't know what those questions would be. I might start by going to ChatGPT and asking them, hey, what are the questions I should be asking myself when generating a story for my business? I might also add some context to it and give it some information about my business, depending on the tool. Like, for example, ChatGPT, you can only send it in text. If you go to, for example, if you use Bard or you use ChatGPT Pro, or you have access to GPT plugins, you can interface with Bing and you can ask it to pull data from your website. So you can give it some context around your business and ask you to come up with the right questions for it, and then just continue from there. So, the ability to use the assistant is really, it's not so much the tool, it's the process that you're going through, right? And that's where I think the beauty of this human AI collaboration comes in, because I can go to ChatGPT and say, what are the right questions I should be asking when I come up with a story? I want to create a story for my business. And it'll give me some answers. It'll probably give me some good questions to ask. But I know it's going to miss something that you're going to see and you're going to know. I know it's going to miss something. So there's that value that's added there.
I think, this is where getting the right inputs at the beginning are so critical, because, you got to have a mission. You've got to have a brand purpose. What's the value proposition? Where does the open road in my market sit? Like being able to boil all that down into an initial imprint, so that you can personalize. And in this case, you're brandizing or personalizing from the perspective of the brand, but then the personal storytelling assistant can also then have you input your bio and who you are as a leader and maybe other people on your team, so it can start to understand how it can develop voice prints and personalized communications across a number of different things. I mean, obviously, if you're delivering a presentation to shareholders or whatever, you're going to want that to come in the voice of the CEO. You're going to want that to come in the voice of the leader, versus if you're creating something that's just a really killer, piece of advertising, that's in the voice of the brand. But you do need to understand these key elements of branding and marketing, which is voice and tone and pillars and all the different elements that go into it. That allows you to start to build these sort of personalized, kind of outputs that come back to you, and you can continue to refine from there. I'm curious of if a CEO came to you and they basically said, like, the biggest challenge I have right now is that every time somebody on my team sends out an email or does what they send out a pitch, whatever, they're rewriting our story on an ongoing basis. This is something I get a lot of times with clients, because they haven't really sort of said, this is our codified version of what it is we do. And therefore, once you have that, you don't have to kind of move these, let people make it up every time.
Yeah.
What would, if a CEO came to you and said, I have this problem of just sort of like message consistency and these sort of things, what would you recommend?
Absolutely, you have to define your story well. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Is that, but this is such an interesting point, because it gets back to just the general process of how you use AI. Is you've identified a problem from the CEO. Like, this is a problem, and I want to point that out because you said it was really important. You've identified a problem that you want to solve, and you could already see the benefits, right? You can see the benefits that number one is going to be consistency, right? People, no matter what they generate, whether it's an article, press release, social media post, pitch deck, whatever it is, it's going to be consistent with what you want that story to be as a CEO, right? So there's consistency. Another benefit from an ROI point of view is, think of the efficiency now that you're saving, that people that are creating all this content manually, right, inconsistently manually, are now, they don't have that, they have that time savings, right? So they can spend their time doing other things that are going to bring value to the company. So it's so important to, number one, identify problems and frustrations and problems and goals that are going to move the needle for you as a company, and also understand the benefits before you jump into even tackling something with AI, right? Again, we don't want to jump into just a tool, some whiz-bangy tools. We want to think this through and really be effective with it. So yeah, you got to get that story right and just iterate over and over again until it's 100% what you want it to be as a CEO.
One of the things I think that is truly amazing about this new era is, this new age, is I can get AI to come in and interpret lots of big data sources, like big chunks of data that would be difficult to make sense of, and turn into a simple narrative. And I think that sort of data-driven storytelling is going to be the hallmark of this new personal storytelling assistant, is that it's able to pull a lot of different elements if you can feed it the right pieces of data. And right now it's a little difficult, because I think if you're counting on ChatGPT to go find that data on its own, you're going to come up with stuff that's a little bit of shine on top of the actual truth. But if you can actually feed it the appropriate data and now say, I need you to make sense of it. Tell me what this means and how do I communicate that effectively? That, to me, how would you go about building, if you're taking this PSA that we're creating, how would you, build that capability in there? Is that through like a couple of different APIs, pulling things? I don't know.
Yeah, so it's going to be available to you really soon. I'll point out this, I wouldn't use ChatGPT for that purpose, namely because of privacy issues. Is once you start thinking about internal information, especially data, ChatGPT is a public interface. So any data that you put into ChatGPT, you have to assume that OpenAI has access to that, and there's no agreement with them between you and your company and them that they can keep that private, right? That it's up to them. They tell you straight out in the beginning when you use the tool, don't put anything you don't want to be public in here, right? So I would use caution there. Now, the flip side, the bright side of this is that both Microsoft and Google have already announced that they're integrating AI capabilities into all of their products. So all the Office 365 products are now going to have what Microsoft's branding as Copilot. So you can go in and interface to your enterprise data, which is kept private and also being used as inputs to these models to generate outputs that are going to benefit for you. So in this example, it's like, okay, as a CEO, you might want to say something like, based on our data, create a 2-paragraph executive summary to explain the past year revenue and where we're going in the next 6 months. Right. And the tools will be able to go out there, access company information, and come out and write 2-paragraph executive summary for you. I mean, it's gonna be there by the end of this year. I expect it to be there. So that capability will be there. But what business owners should be thinking about now is how do we get our data ready to be integrated into these products, and what are the applications? Like right now, you're thinking about how to do this as a CEO, right? So being able to brainstorm those ideas and then prioritize that is to say, okay, when this tool is ready, here's the first thing I want to do, because this is going to give the best ROI for me and our business right now.
Well, I think that as we're building this perfect storytelling assistant, I do think that the ability to make sense and keep it simple. I think a lot of times as humans, we sort of tend to get lost in the weeds. And one of the things I found as a writer that ChatGPT does for me is it sort of gets rid of the eccentricities and it says, no, we're staying focused on these sort of core ideas. I'm also interested in the idea of personalized customer communication. Can we train our PSA to, react and interact with our customers in a way in which makes their interaction better and makes our life easier? And I'm thinking of this, when we were launching the summit, Ari was able to make, roll a bunch of calls, and he made one particular phone call, live, but then, and he went and asked everybody after at the actual summit, did you guys think that was an actual, call for me? And everybody raised their hand and said, yeah. And, he kind of, obviously in that particular case, ripped the kimono off. But that part of a PSA, the ability to create personalized customer interactions, how do I bake that into my fabulous new whatever we're calling it? We've got to come up with a name for our PSA. We'll work on that. We'll put that out on
Judy,
Judy. We'll call it Judy. Okay.
I don't know where that came from.
All right, Judy. Yeah, no, fine. Judy. We have to come up with we'll put in the comment section here once we come up with what JUDY stands for. All right, so Judy, we want Judy now to be able to offer personalized customer communication. How do we bake that into this?
Interesting. So I want to point out, it's interesting that we would even name this, right? Because that feels different, doesn't it?
Now it does. It feels real, right? We were talking the PSA. Yeah, that's just a thing. But now it's Judy.
It feels different. So that's something, and this relates to doing personalized content. Is it's all about enhancing the human experience. So when Chris and we name our tool Judy, that is now we just enhanced the human experience with this tool.
We anthropomorphized.
Right? And this is so critical. So the personalization, this is something that I believe this is going to be the first major step in enhancing the human experience. And I remember that event that we went to, and whereas, I think we came back from break and I had some banana chips in front of me, and then we realized that like everybody got like a snack, and we realized that the snack was because we had explained earlier what our favorite snack was, and I think my answer was banana, so I had banana chips as a snack. But
I'll have to give you a rip open the kimono further. That was not AI. That was basically just good customer service on Ari's part.
But it enhances the human experience. But the personalization comes in to play where, I think it was an email that asked us like to fill out a survey, and I remember him being very like, please fill out the survey, and then we got a voice message from him saying, I'm excited to see you at the event. Please fill out the survey. And I really thought, like most of the people in the event, that he had called me and left a voicemail, which we learned was not true. It was just like this voicemail showed up in our, it showed up in our inbox. And, the next step to that would be for him to put my name in the voicemail. So if I checked the voicemail and I was like, hey, Joe, just wanted to say I'm excited to see you at the event. And if there was something personal that he knew about me, and when I say he knew, I mean had some data about me, right? Because up to that point, I had never met Ari before. He didn't know anything about me. But maybe at some point when I signed up for the program, if he knew the name of my company, he might have said something like, hey, Joe, I'm excited to see you here. I can't wait to learn more about Truversity. And I'm excited. I know you're in AI, and I'm excited to talk to you about that. And then was able to leave that voicemail. I mean, that's a whole nother level of human experience. And the technology and actually the tools are available today to do that. So you can go out and create these personalized messages and videos and audios. I mean, we've had this in email for a long time, right?
I think e-commerce, there's been personalized recommendation for years. But the ability to do personalized communication, this is like where we're kind of like crossing a bit of a Rubicon, but when it's done right and when it's done with the human hand, I think it actually it's a real asset of Judy's to be able to do that. Can Judy help with employee engagement? Is I guess my next question. Obviously, communicating with employees, keeping them focused on your mission, your values, keeping them apprised of what the company is doing at the sort of macro level, as well as, some very clear examples or case studies of the product being engaged with or the community being engaged with or that sort of thing. Feels to me like Judy ought to be able to make that a part of her remit as well. Yes?
So this came up with me recently. At an event, I was speaking at an event, and I brought one of my team members with me, and I didn't anticipate this, but so I was kind of off to the side because I was speaking. I wasn't interfacing with the audience until after the event, and so my team member Jake, his name's Jake, was out there and setting things up, putting my books up there and whatnot, and I realized, like I was watching, people were coming up to him and asking him questions about the company. And so he's wearing a Truversity shirt. They know he's with me, and they're asking him questions about the company. So I couldn't hear what he was saying, but after the event, I had asked him about the experience. And I said, so what did they ask you? And he was telling me some of the questions. I said, well, what did you say? And he told me some things, but I realized at that moment that I need to do a good job with my entire team. Everybody that works in the company needs to be able to explain a consistent message, right? So we talked about generating content, right? So maybe they could generate content because we've, added or set up the tool with the brand voice. They can generate the content. But now, as live humans, if they're in a position where they're going to be talking about this, can they communicate that effectively? So where does Judy come into play?
Well, this is a good question because I actually, when I talk to marketing clients, I say, well, how often do you talk to your customers about your values? Like, is it something that comes up once a month, once a quarter, every 6 months when you talk about redoing the website, or is it something that is a part of the conversation on a regular basis? And if you have a Judy, she can remind you that, you are about, ease of use, or you are about, simplicity in design, or whatever your core values are. She's been taught this because it's a part of the pillars and the storytelling, building blocks that you better. And so she now knows it. And so when she's communicating with employees on your behalf or whatever, I think she can make sure that they understand what it is that this company does day to day. And I think that's an important part of our new personal storytelling assistant.
Let's pull a thread on that one a little bit. So what does Judy look like?
Oh, wow. Super smart.
What does she look like? Like, does she look like Chat GPT?
No, I feel like I'm thinking more like Velma from Scooby Doo.
Is she a video? Like, is she a video on a computer? Is she a hologram? What is she?
Well, I guess I would have to throw it back to you. What can we make her? I guess like what are the opportunities? What are the options?
Absolutely. So this opens the doors on another concept, which is AI. To me is a system, right? AI is a some sort of system, and that could be many forms, right? That could be let's start ChatGPT could be one example of a Judy, whereas we might ask our employees to type in what you think our message is, and ask Judy, because she knows. Let's say we set it up that she knows what our brand voice is. Mm-hmm. We can say, ask Judy how you did, right? Give you some feedback. Mm-hmm. And they do that, and they come back, and Judy might come back and say, yeah, you know what? You got this and that right. One thing I want to tell you, just say this a little bit different. Right? So for feedback, that's certainly one option. But think of how this can evolve, right? This can be a video of somebody that looks human, that you can't even tell the difference whether this is a real person that has ever existed in the world or something that AI has been generating. It has a voice that sounds real. You don't even blink. You don't even think for a second that this could be AI generated. It's so real and authentic. It kind of almost has a personality, right, to it. And that form of Judy is a different human experience than a Chat GPT form of Judy. So Judy can evolve over time. She might be born as a Chat GPT tool, but then evolve into a video tool, and then even evolve into something more realistic, like a hologram or something physical where you can almost just reach out.
I feel like if you could make it like Judy could be like an Amazon Alexa in everybody's office, so everybody could just like go, hey, Judy, what should we do here? I have two more questions about what Judy could do. One is on training materials. And I went through this recently. My soon-to-be 11-year-old son plays soccer on a club team, and parents obviously want to make sure that they get the best out of their coaching, etc. There were some questions about the coaching, whatever, and I just said, well, look, this seems like it's not really the individual coach's issue. It may be that he's not getting the proper training because these are like professional soccer players who are suddenly teaching 11 or 12-year-olds. They need to get a very clear breakdown of what's expected in terms of passing and dribbling at this age level and that sort of thing. And there must be stuff out there that does this, and maybe you could interpret it through Judy to create a code of conduct, to create a curriculum, to create, the type of training materials that keep your employees on target and on message and clearly articulating the story that you want your customers to ultimately hear. So I think, training materials ought to be a thing Judy ought to be able to be good at, right?
Yes, I think generative AI tools like Judy and ChatGPT are great at creating documentation. Certainly, absolutely. If you want to create documentation, there are other tools out there, some that we have in the works right now. I don't want to reveal any surprises yet, but tools that are out there that can create realistic videos of humans, recognizable humans in the company, with voices that sound exactly like people, and creating video experiences for training and onboarding, right, in companies. So that's another way to another form at which this could be used. But absolutely, it's when we think about what we're talking about here, it's defining the story and then communicating the story. And there's so many ways once you have that story defined that now you can communicate it. And whether it's communicating it internally for onboarding or training, or externally to your customers, you're going to be able to do so in such a way with video, with audio. Right now, you could do it. The technology's there. Video, audio, text, right? So for documentation, for images, you want to create images, right? You can do all that now. Someday it's going to get better, right? We talk about the fact that AI is not perfect, right? So there's a certain level right now of realism, right? So you think about ChatGPT, when you read the outputs in a document, it's good, right? It can create good documentation. Okay. Voice cloning, very good. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's at a certain level. It's getting better. Video creation, video cloning, getting better. It's not quite, it's 90% there, in my opinion, of where it needs to be have that full human experience, but it's getting better. Holograms, not quite there, especially cost-wise, but someday that might be another option.
Well, I think the last thing that Judy needs to do, and I've saved the best for last because I think it's a big topic. I've got it listed under speech writing, but it is the pitch. It is whether it's for customers, whether it's for investors, whether it's for regulators, you're testifying before Congress, whatever the case may be. If you've got to sit down and tell your story. That to me strikes me as where Judy could be the most valuable, depending on it. If you've fed the right information in up front, you've created the brand narrative, Judy understands, it's got the right voice prints for you personally, maybe for other parts of your team, understands who the different players are on your team. At that point, ChatGPT can be I think an absolute game changer in terms of being able to present. Like, you can say, I need to come in and shake it up. Make me sound like, and it's ChatGPT is a great mimic. I want to sound like, some mix of Steve Jobs and Bob Pittman. And suddenly you're revolutionizing the industry and you're doing this, that, and the other thing. And then you're like, no, I want to pull that back a little bit. This is the area where I actually think, in the hands of a really good creative partner, and maybe you as the CEO, maybe you are that creative executive, but if you're not, find somebody who can do that effectively with ChatGPT, because I think in terms of the Uber messaging and really understanding the brand and the business, ChatGPT and the kind of generative stack in general, it can be an absolute game changer in terms of helping you to communicate, big ideas, and tackle, things much more ambitiously than you might have 12 months ago. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a perfect use case for ChatGPT. Is if you're a CEO and you're like, write me a speech on, some topic, I need to give quarterly results for the past quarter. Write me a speech on that, right? So right now, the way it is, if you do that in ChatGPT, it's not going to really write anything because it doesn't have the data. But let's assume for a second, maybe you're using some of these Google or Microsoft tools at the end of the year where you have access to your data and you want to write a speech about it. Sure. I mean, the text, they'll write a nice speech for you. Now, what's interesting is that what we do before then is we would go to a speechwriter, and the speechwriter would ask us questions, right? This is usually how this process works, is the speechwriter would ask us questions, and based on that questions, they would write the speech, right? So ChatGPT, or an AI tool, is may not ask the questions. It may ask the questions. Bing Chat just does sometimes ask follow-on questions. But you have to give it the information in order for it to write the speech. Now, what's great about this is such a time saver, because you don't need to go back and forth with the speechwriter. In the old way, the speechwriter would write the speech, you'd read it as a CEO, and you'd say, okay, I don't like this, I don't like that, change this, red pen it, whatever. Go back, iterate the process. They give you another version, you look at it, you might give it back to them for another revision or two. Each revision takes a couple of days to get done. With a tool like ChatGPT, now you eliminate that back and forth. So when the first version that ChatGPT gives you, if it's not what you want, you can ask it to change things. And it gives you the next revision right there instantly in seconds. You don't have this delay through the iterative revision process. Huge time saver, huge cost saver. Right then and there is a huge benefit for a tool like ChatGPT. But this will evolve to the point where it's not just writing a speech for you, Chris. Like, you can write a speech now, and you would have to still go out there and give the speech. But
now you're going to get it to come in and give the speech for me too, right?
now I'm going to create, hey, I could create a video. That technology is available today, is you create a video of somebody giving the speech. And in their voice, it looks like them, just like us. Like, you're watching this video, it looks like me and you talking. Mm-hmm. It's in our voice, and it's saying everything that you've already approved as a real human CEO. You know exactly what they're going to say, and you know it. Mm-hmm. And you may have even watched the video, and you can approve the tonality of the voice, the gestures, the look on the face. You're not sweating when you're telling them about the future of your company. You can approve all that ahead of time, even to the point where, if you have to do something live or walk into a room and give it, well, maybe that will exist someday too.
Well, you're getting very Buck Rogers with this. I'm in sort of to sum up Judy, our personal storytelling assistant. So first, you've got to use her to help create a compelling brand narrative, right? You've got to sort of feed in the initial data. This is our brand, and for that, probably would want to go and talk with a CMO or somebody who knows the questions that you need to answer. This is the purpose. This is the mission. This is the value proposition. This is why us, why now, all the different things. This is the problem that we solve, all the building blocks that you have. Then you need to feed in to personalize it, you need to start to feed in the voice prints of the different people, the bios of the people on your team, and you've got to create this, personalized communication. I think that's 100% a matter of teaching ChatGPT or whatever your generative tools are, not just the stuff that is on the resume, but what is the actual essence of this person? What is it that they do particularly well? Then I think you want to move into asking Judy to help you with data-driven storytelling. I think you want to find a way in which Judy can help you with personalized customer communications, employee engagement, training materials, and speech writing. So now we have what I would suggest is this CMO, Chief Communications Officer, brand storyteller, the person who's kind of the keeper of the narrative, and the narrative comes all the way back to those values. So it's actually not just a marketing function. It is like a corporate function. It is a overarching organizational function that you have. This is my vision of the personal storytelling assistant. What do you think? Do you think we can market Judy? Can we take this to market?
Absolutely. Love it, Chris. This is great. Yeah, Judy, I think Judy will do very well in this world. That's great.
Well, I think like the next step beyond that is, as you start to build these different pieces together, you start to understand that a lot of times it begins with that first voice that you talk to. Like when we go all the way back to, well, we got to start with a compelling brand narrative. Talk to a CMO, talk to a marketer, find out, like, make sure that you're building all those pieces together. That's why I think we're not necessarily, replacing people. We're simplifying roles, and because we've got a task killer who doesn't know how to do a job. So you bring in the job person to sort of kind of lay out the basics so that when you start to ask for those specific tasks, it can actually start to give you better answers.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to try out some of these different tools in our next segment.
So I do want to point out a couple of things. So you had mentioned sort of like task manager, and that's where I see the shift in a lot of people's roles and responsibilities, going from somebody who's actually doing the work to somebody who's leading the work, somebody who's overseeing the work, who becomes more of the project manager. So if you're in a job where you think AI could be replacing you, if you are Judy, if you're the real Judy doing this now, right, then you're going to become the leadership Judy, where you're piecing this together and overseeing it. But the more important thing I want to point out is the opportunity here for you, Chris, in your business, in this hypothetical example.
Do tell.
This is an opportunity to actually build this as a product. And in a lot of businesses, you'll find that your use case that benefits your business could benefit others. And it's totally feasible today, without a huge amount of money, to build a tool like this and interface through the APIs of things like ChatGPT, where you can put a front-end interface on this and guide people using a method that's personal to you. So as you go through this process with a CEO, I'm sure there's some questions that you would ask. Build that into the tool so they're not having to come up with the questions themselves, but they interface with this tool, and the outputs that they get is now they have a speech. Now they have the ability to create
Training material,
right? Maybe some video content and their own, with their own voice. All these are outputs and results that you can create from your tool is a huge value to a company. So an investment in, getting some low code, no code developers to put an application together is more feasible and approachable than it's ever been before in history for a business.
Well, you heard it here, folks. We're going to be launching Judy shortly, coming soon this fall. We'll be back in the next segment to actually look at different types of tools that you can use to create your own Judy. We'll be right back.